Thank you. Well, brother, now that the days of unleavened bread are completed for another year, showing us that we have been delivered out of our sins, let me ask you a question. How special do you think you are to God? In Exodus chapter 4, God called Israel his firstborn. And then he told Moses to go and tell this to Pharaoh. Then in the very next verse, God told Moses to tell this to Pharaoh, that it is very clear that God wanted Moses to tell him if he did not let Israel go, God was going to kill Pharaoh's firstborn. Please go with me to Exodus chapter 4, verse 22. Exodus 4, 22. And you shall say unto Pharaoh, thus saith the Lord, Israel is my son, even my firstborn. And I say to you, let my son go, that he may serve me. And if you refuse to let him go, behold, I will slay your son, even your firstborn. What a message to deliver and what a message to receive. But you know, brethren, let's be very clear. All of this is significant to God. It is significant to us, and it is significant to his master plan of salvation. We cannot overlook the importance God's word places on the firstborn or on first fruits. Those words are sometimes together, sometimes they're even interchangeable. I have entitled this sermon today, Special to God. And let's remember, the firstborn of man and beast were in jeopardy during that original Passover. Then in Exodus chapter 11, Moses told the people what God had told him that God was going to do to Egypt if Egypt did not let Israel go, God's chosen or claimed firstborn. Exodus 11, verse 4, we begin. Exodus 11, verse 4. And Moses said, thus saith the Lord, about midnight will I go out into the midst of Egypt, and all the firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh that sits upon his throne, even unto the firstborn of the man of the maidservant that is behind the mill, and all the firstborn of beasts. What he's saying is, no one is going to be left out. That's what he's saying. And there shall be a great cry throughout all the land of Egypt, such as there was none like it, nor shall be like it anymore. But against any of the children of Israel shall not a dog move his tongue. In other words, no one's going to be to speak against Israel, because against Israel is either man or beast, so that they may know that the Lord does put a difference between the Egyptians and Israel. I think it seems obvious that God is telling us that he was going to put a difference between Egypt and Israel, his claimed firstborn. I mean, we just read it. It's in verse 7, that be part of the verse, that you may know how that the Lord does put a difference between the Egyptian and Israel. Then in chapter 12, God tells us how he set Israel apart, how he made the difference. When God saw the blood on the side posts and over the door, Israel's firstborn were spared. Exodus 12 and verse 29, Exodus 12:29. And it shall come to pass that at midnight the Lord smote all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh that sat on his throne unto the firstborn of the captive that was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of cattle. So we see at Passover, God did not kill the firstborn of Israel because of the Passover lamb's blood. That blood is what made the difference. Prior to the Exodus, the event itself of the Exodus, I'm not talking about the book, the Bible gives us some indication of the value of the firstborn. Yet, at the time of the Exodus, and then throughout the Bible, God shows he has a special interest in the firstborn. And through the days of unleavened bread, we saw the connection between the way sheaf and the spiritual firstborn. While the way sheaf pictures the resurrected Jesus, it also shows him as the first of the firstfruits. He also is the firstborn from the dead, the first to be born to everlasting spirit-born DNA life. This had never happened before. Colossians 1 and verse 15, Colossians 1:15. Who is the image of the invisible God? The who there, of course, is Jesus. The firstborn of every creature, or as it says in the NIV, firstborn over all creation. In other words, over everything. And then back in Exodus chapter 13, God commands Israel to sanctify, to set apart the firstborn because God had claimed them. Exodus 13, which is right after the Passover and the killing of the firstborn. Exodus 13, verse 2, sanctify unto me all the firstborn, whatsoever opens the womb among the children of Israel, both of man and of beast, it is mine. And then down in verse 13, it shows all of the firstborn were to be redeemed. Verse 13, and every firstling of an ass that you shall redeem with a lamb. And if you will not redeem it, in other words, if you're not going to do this, then you shall break its neck or his neck. And all the firstborn of man among your children shall you redeem. Do you think the firstborn is important to God or special to God? I mean, we just see the firstborn animals could either be killed or redeemed. Verse 15, and it came to pass when Pharaoh would hardly let us go, that the Lord slew all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both the firstborn of man and the firstborn of beast. Therefore, as a result of that, therefore, I sanctify to the Lord all that opens the matrix, being male, but all the firstborn of my children I redeem. The I there is God. Later, during Israel's stay at Mount Sinai, so they left, they crossed the Red Sea during the last day of unleavened bread, and they traveled out, and here they've now arrived at Mount Sinai. God addresses the topic of firstborn again. Exodus chapter 22, this is at Mount Sinai, Exodus 22, verse 29. You shall not delay to offer the first of your ripe fruits and of your, and it says in the King James liquors, it's meaning wines, The firstborn of your son shall you give unto me. In other words, your fruits, your vegetables, your wine, all of that is going to be the first of it is given to God. And then he says in the same verse, the firstborn of your son shall you give unto me. Likewise shall you do with your ox and with your sheep. 7 days it shall be with his dam. On the 8th day you shall give it to me. Exodus 34. This is still at Mount Sinai. Exodus 34, verse 20. But the firstling of an ass, this is the repeating of what he said earlier. But of the firstling of an ass you shall redeem with a lamb, and if you redeem him not, then you shall break his neck. All the firstborn of your sons shall be redeemed, and none shall appear before me empty. This is something that is very special to God. In Numbers chapter 3, God explains how he deals with the firstborn of every Israelite, that he has claimed them since the Passover in Egypt. Numbers 3, verse 12. Numbers 3, verse 12. And I behold, I have taken the Levites from among the children of Israel instead of all the firstborn that opened the matrix among the children of Israel. Therefore, the Levites shall be mine. So now he's showing us he's making a difference. He's making a difference here even within the children of Israel. Verse 13, because all the firstborn are mine, for on the day that I smote all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, I hallowed unto me all the firstborn of Israel, both man and beast. Mine shall they be, I am the Lord. Then drop down to verse 41. And you shall take the Levites for me, I am the Lord, instead of all the firstborn among the children of Israel, and the cattle of the Levites instead of all the firstlings among the cattle of the children of Israel. Numbers 9, verse 17. Numbers 8 and verse 17. Numbers 8, verse 17. For all the firstborn of the children of Israel are mine, both man and beast. On the day that I smote every firstborn in the land of Egypt, I sanctified, I set apart them for myself. And I have taken the Levites for all the firstborn of the children of Israel, or in the place of all the children of Israel. 19. And I have given the Levites as a gift to Aaron and to his sons. The reason is they're the high priest. This is where the high priest comes from among the children of Israel, to do the service of the children of Israel and the tabernacle of the congregation, and to make an atonement for the children of Israel. And then he says, so that, or that there be no plague among the children of Israel when the children of Israel come nigh into the sanctuary. In other words, it's worded in a way we would probably word it differently today. If we were doing it, we would say, if we listen and do what God tells us to do, you do it this way so that nothing bad is going to come against you because you're doing what God has said. So we see from these passages, we see that God took the entire tribe of Levi in place of each individual Israelite family's firstborn. He took the Levites' firstborn cattle instead of that of all the other tribes, all of their cattle. Then, and we're not going through all of this, you can look at it on your own. Then God gave a number of offerings, the first fruits and all of those various things to the Levites because they represented the firstborn. Now, in the Bible, we find heavy emphasis on the first fruits because they also represented the firstborn of Israel. Go with me to Numbers 18. And if you're doing notes, put 1 through 15. We're not going to read all of those verses. We're going to read several of them, but not all of them. Numbers 18, verse 1. And the Lord said unto Aaron, you and your sons and your father's house with you shall bear the iniquity of the sanctuary, and you and your sons with you shall bear the iniquity of your priesthood. In other words, the holy priest, the high priest. And your brethren also of the tribe of Levite, the tribe of your father, bring you with you, that they may be joined unto you and minister unto you. So he's already told us, he's already separated. We find this out way early, that he separated Aaron and his sons to be the high priest. This is the lineage the high priest is going to be coming from. And then God then kills the firstborn that do not do the Passover, even the cattle, even all the animals that are the firstborn. It didn't make any difference who or what it was. If they didn't do the Passover, then their firstborn was killed. Then we see that God separated the tribe of Levi for God as the firstborn for all of them. And that's what he says. And then he says, I've joined them to you because they're to minister unto you. But you and your sons with you shall minister before the tabernacle of witness, and they shall keep your charge and the charge of all the tabernacle. Only you shall not come nigh the vessels of the sanctuary and the altar, that neither they nor you also die. No, he's giving a division of labor here. What the high priest is doing is separate from what the rest of the firstborn, the children of Israel, of the tribe of Levi, which has been separated, they're doing other things. And they shall be joined unto you and keep the charge of the tabernacle of the congregation for all the service of the tabernacle, and a stranger shall not come nigh unto you. Now, this is interesting to me is because later when I'm jumping way ahead, I'm not getting it, I'm just going to put it in here. Later, when the tribes divide, somebody in their own thinking decided that they would make the tribe of Dan the high priest. And go, really? He's told you don't do this. And you shall keep the charge of the sanctuary and the charge of the altar, that there be no wrath any more upon the children of Israel. And behold, I have taken your brethren, the Levites, from among the children of Israel. To you they are given as a gift for the Lord to do the service of the tabernacle of the congregation. Therefore, you and your sons with you, the high priest, shall keep your priest office for everything of the altar and within the veil. In other words, the regular Levites aren't going in to do this job. It's just you, just the job of the high priest. That's what he's saying. And you shall serve. In other words, you do those jobs. I have given your priest office unto you as a service of gift, and the stranger that comes nigh shall be put to death. You think God is picky about this? Verse 14. Everything devoted to Israel shall be yours. Everything that opens the matrix and all flesh, which they bring unto the Lord, whether it be of man, of beast, shall be yours. It's going to belong to Aaron's family here. This is what he's saying. Nevertheless, the firstborn of man shall you surely redeem, and the firstling of unclean beasts shall you redeem. The firstborn are referenced many different times in the Bible. In fact, there are at least 32 different occasions. I think it's a topic that's pretty important to God. In other words, it's special to him. I'm going to read just two or three of the references. The first one I want to read is in Psalm 78:51. Psalm 78, verse 51. And smote all the firstborn in Egypt and the chief of their strength in the tabernacles of Ham. Psalm 89, verse 27. 89:27. Also, I will make him my firstborn, higher than the kings of the earth. Now, obviously, he's referring to Jesus. Psalm 136 and verse 10. 136 and verse 10. To him that smote Egypt in their firstborn, for his mercy endureth forever. Like I said, there are many of them. This is just a few. So I think we need to ask a question. What does this have to do with us today, the Church of God? Does it have anything to do with us, the Church of God? The name Levi means joining. And the Levites, those that have been joined with the high priest, that's what we've seen, were to do the service of the tabernacle. They were to be serving God, and they were to be linking or joining people to God. Now, I'm not even going to turn it because you know this. You remember Peter tells us the church, he says, you are a chosen people, you are a royal priesthood. Of course, we remember Jesus is our high priest. We are to be of service to him. Now, did I just state that the church is this spiritual Levite? Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Today, we know Jesus was the first of the firstfruits and the firstborn of God's spiritual harvest. Now, why the wave sheaf represented the resurrected Jesus, the firstfruits are in God's church. Colossians 1:14. Colossians 1 and verse 14. In whom we have redemption through his blood, even the forgiveness of sin. That's talking about Passover, days of unleavened bread. We just went through all of that. Who is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of every creature. He's talking about Jesus. For by him were all things created that are in heaven and that are earth, visible and invisible, whether they be thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. All things are created by him and for him. And he is before all things, and by him are all things consistent. In other words, they continue to exist. And he is the head of the body, the church, who is the beginning of the firstborn from the dead, that in all things he might have the preeminence, that he would always be first, always. So what he is showing us is he's always going to be the head. He is the high priest, but he has this body, a spiritual unity, and it is the spiritual Levites, and it's also called the church, that are going to be serving him. They're going to be doing things to him. And it says who Jesus is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in all things he might have the preeminence. He would be first. Now, I know you know back in even back in grade school, you probably, if you have a first, there's going to come a second. Or maybe, and that's in, that's in English and that's in math. But in a spiritual thing, there is the first and there is the first, and always to be first. And then there's everything else that is under him is also called first. It's sort of like in English, you have a diagram. You have an A and you have a B. A is Jesus, B is the church, i.e. us. First. The firstborn from the dead, then there's something that's going to follow also that's going to be resurrected. And that's the church. And we see it through other holy days. So, brethren, God has completed part of the work of his master plan by and for Jesus Christ, the first of the firstfruits and the first begotten from the dead. Now, at this time, present day, today, present, the world is groaning, is waiting for the rest of God's firstfruits to be harvested. I mean, that's what we're told. Romans 8, verse 18. Romans 8:18. For I reckon that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory that shall be revealed in us. And I like the King James much better because it's revealed in us, because some of the more modern translations is revealed to us. In other words, we're going to see it. That's what it seems to be implying. No, it's going to be us. It's in us. It's going to be revealed in us. For the earnest expectation of the creature waits for the manifestation of the sons of God. Jesus the first, and we're the, to use the term, second of the first. In other words, the first grouping that are going to be resurrected. Others are going to be resurrected later. They're not going to have the same jobs. So if we, the Church of God, are the firstfruits, and we are, and if we are in the process of becoming the remainder of God's firstborn spiritual harvest, and we are, what are the firstfruits that we receive? Brethren, we have been given spiritual firstfruits, and we wait for our body's redemption to become the remainder of God's spiritual firstborn. Romans 8 and verse 23. And not only they, but ourselves also, which have the firstfruits of the Spirit, even we ourselves, grown within ourselves, waiting for the adoption, to wit, or to come, the redemption of our body. So, brethren, as spiritual Levites, we have work to do. Aaron and his sons, I'm going to go back and kind of catch it up so we'll see where I am, and hope I didn't lose anybody along the way. God separated Aaron and his sons lineage all the way down to be and to hold the office of high priest. Then he joined the rest of the tribe of Levi to them, because he had redeemed all of Levi, of which Aaron and his sons are members, to be the representation of all of the firstborn. And then you come forward, and then Jesus Christ comes and walks around on the face of the earth as a flesh and blood human being and does exactly what God tells him to do. Then after he is accepted as the way chief, then he becomes our high priest. And what I'm showing is, as spiritual Levites, because that's very clear the church is, that's what the church is, we're joined to Jesus. Just like the physical tribe of Levi, the priest had a job to do to serve the high priest. The high priest had its own job, and those serving from the tribe of Levi had jobs to do that was a service, and they're both are called gifts to each other. So we come forward, and the church is the spiritual Levites, and we've been joined to Jesus, the high priest, and there's work that we are to be doing today as part of this spiritual Levite priest. So I have 2 or 3 bullets to take a look at some of the work that we have to do. And the first one that I have is, we must keep ourselves clean for God's service. If a physical priest was unclean, he could not be involved and do the service of the priesthood, of the ministry. We're told that we're to keep ourselves clean. Go with me to James. There's different places we could look, but I'm just going to read this one verse. James 1, verse 27. Pure religion and undefiled before God and the Father is this, to visit the fatherless and the widows in their afflictions. Now, that's part of the job that we should be doing. We should be looking out for one another. We should be contacting those and talking to those, encouraging those, lifting up the fatherless and the widows. It says in their affliction. And like I've said so many times before, what is the affliction of being a fatherless and the widows? Being a fatherless and a widow. Now, they have all the same afflictions that everybody else has, but they have that as a separate affliction, and we're to be encouraging them, strengthening them. That's part of the job. But we go on in this verse here in James 1:27, and to keep himself unspotted from the world. And I'm just going to reference it, but we are told over in Revelation 18, verse 4, come out of her, my people. Come out of what? Out of the world, out of the cares and the ways of this world, that you be not partakers of their sins. Have we been separated from the world at least in a spiritual way that we're to consider ourselves? Yes, we just went through the days of unleavened bread. We just went through the days of unleavened bread, showing that our sins have been delivered. The second of these bullets of works that we have to do, we must certainly wait on God. And this is not like waiting in a doctor's office where you just sit there and you wait and you read, 2-year-old magazine articles. You know what I'm talking about. No, we're to be busy. We're to be busy. Psalm 27 and verse 14, Psalm 27:14. Wait on the Lord, be of good courage, and he shall strengthen your heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. We doing what God has us to do. The word wait in the Bible means to hope, to anticipate, and to trust. And to hope and to trust in the Lord requires several things. It requires faith and patience, humility, long-suffering, meekness, keeping the commandments, and enduring to the end. Doing all the things that God has told us to do. enduring to the end is Matthew 24:13. We're not waiting on God like we wait in a doctor's office to be called back to the doctor. We're waiting on, we're serving, we're hoping, we're trusting. We're building faith and patience, humility and meekness and long suffering and keeping the commandments. And we're enduring to the end, doing the service of serving Jesus Christ, the high priest. And then another bullet that's part of the work that we do, and there's many, I'm just listing a few of them here. We must do a work of joining. Because you see, brethren, as the body of Jesus Christ, we work to join with each other's as God does the calling. And we're to work to build and to edify each other. First Thessalonians 5, verse 11. 1 Thessalonians 5, verse 11, wherefore comfort yourselves together. Now, who's he talking to? The church, us, these spiritual Levites. And edify, meaning to build up one another, even as also you do. He's complimenting them and he's saying, continue to do this. Continue to strengthen and comfort and build up one another. So that's part of the job that we're to be doing as we are waiting for the Lord, as we are serving Jesus Christ. The word edified that is used here comes from a Greek word. Actually, I guess more technically, it comes from a Latin word that is used for construction, or probably more accurately for building, for a building. We get our English word edifice, which means building. You know, there's this edifice over there. He's talking about the building. But in that language, it means much more than just that building over there. It means especially a large and impressive one. It means that one that is spectacular. It means one that is special. So I go back and I say, are we special to God? Well, I hope we certainly understand that, yeah, we are. But you know, brethren, what this is actually implying is we're to be, as the body of Jesus Christ, we work to join each other to God, and we're to be edifying and lifting up one another. We are to be special to one another, lifting each other up so that they will be this spectacular building that is used by God. I mean, it's a big, huge picture that we could get. And I don't know, they always think about it just like this. I mean, please understand, God is not finished with any of us yet. How do I know? Because we're still here. Because we're still, to use the phrase, we're still above ground. God is not finished with us, and we should be helping and building and strengthening, lifting up one another in whatever way we can, as best as we can, to be encouragers and all of those things. I mean, after all, we still have things to do. We are special to God. I mean, because we are first fruits. The Aaronic blessing. And the Lord spoke unto Moses, saying, speaking to Aaron and to his son, saying, on this wise you shall bless the children of Israel, saying unto them, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. And they shall put my name upon the children of Israel, and I will bless them. Of course, God has placed his name upon us. Of course, we are blessed by God. We're special to him. We're first fruits. We're spiritual spiritual Levites, joined to Jesus Christ to do the things that he's instructing us, that he wants us to do, and to help one another to be this bright, shining, spectacular building that can be used by God the Father and Jesus Christ. So God bless each one of you, Father. Have a good rest of the Sabbath. Be blessed. And we love you all very, very much.